The Tuesday, May 7th, 2019, 5:15 p.m. special meeting of the Marquette City Commission is called to order. As item one on the agenda, I'd like everybody to please follow the commission in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, if you will please read the roll.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Campana? Here. Commissioner Frazier?
Here.
Commissioner Hill? Here. Commissioner Schlegel?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds?
Here.
And Mayor Stonehouse.
Here. Commissioners, we have the agenda in front of you. If I can have a motion for approval of the agenda. Commissioner Frazier?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Is there a second available? Commissioner Reynolds?
Second.
Commissioner Frazier, comments?
No comments.
Commissioner Reynolds?
None.
Any other commissioner? Hearing none. All those commissioners in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed by no? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us down to announcements. I have no announcements other than just to explain that this is a special meeting of the City Commission. The rules that we follow are the same rules as we would follow at a regularly scheduled meeting of the City Commission. The difference being that this particular meeting is called to only address those items that appear on the agenda. And you typically will do a special meeting in rare circumstances when you have an object or a topic that is important in nature enough to call for that, or in this instance where we need to make certain that we have a time constraint involved with what we're doing and that we have all commissioners available to be present. And sometimes gathering all of us together in the same place on an on-scheduled time can be a challenge. So this is the reason why we're doing the special meeting. That brings us to public comments, the first public comment period. Comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address when making public comments.
John Mason.
I'm sorry, sir, but the public comments are done at the podium.
At first, from what I got out of the Mining Journal, I hated this
I'm
project.
sorry, what is your address?
Oh, 1010 Jefferson.
In Marquette?
Pardon?
In Marquette?
I was prepared to come in here and complain, but looking at it, I kind of like it. And it was not well described in the Mining Journal. Well, they only have limited space. But anyway, if you could keep the cost down, that would be great.
Thank you.
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic. First, I have a comment. There's a pond over on that second drawing there. It's labeled a detention pond, and I'm hoping whoever put those slides together could confirm, is that a detention pond or a retention pond? Because if it's a detention pond, I have the idea you're going to be throwing people in there overnight to detain them. I think you mean retention pond, but I'm not sure, okay? That's my number one question. My number 2 point is I think we need to do this. I think we need to do this to increase the value of our town. I just came back from a lovely weekend in Midland, Michigan, where I used to live for about 10 years of my life when I worked for Dow. They have a park there called Dow Gardens, which is the old Dow estate, which everybody knows is Dow Gardens. They recently invested in another piece of land and built the largest, longest pathway. It's called a canopy pathway. It's the longest one in the United States. And they took Dow Gardens, which was beautiful, and they made it better. And it was just crawling with people on Saturday morning. People paid money, actually, to go up this canopy pathway. And I had to give kudos to Midland for investing in a park and making it better, even though the original park was fantastic. So I wanted you to know that I saw this, and it costs money, and people can always say reasons why you shouldn't do it, but I just saw the benefit of investing in it. And I also born and raised here, as everyone knows. I view Lakeshore Boulevard as one of the critical pathways within Marquette, Michigan. It's a critical pathway because it's the main route out to the island. And as much as I understand why the city manager shut Lakeshore Boulevard this winter, driving up to Presque Isle and down to Holly just wasn't the same to go out to the island. It didn't have the same ambiance, it didn't have the same feel. So I'm in favor of this. I know it's going to cost money, but you never go wrong in investing in land, and you never go wrong in investing in Lakeshore land for what it's worth. And as long as that's not a detention pond where we put miscreants, it's a retention pond where we hold on to liquid before it goes into the lake, I think you'll be in good hands. And I know you're going to have to take money away from other projects. This is for the entire city. This is the whole ball of wax, because the island is the heart and soul of Marquette. And I'm sorry I'm holding the microphone up, but my family gave me grief last week that they couldn't see my face when I spoke. So I said I'm going to have to hold the microphone up, so that's why I'm doing this. So thank you very much. I hope you vote yes.
Thank you.
Matt Lutenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in the city of Marquette. I guess, can I speak on number 2 and 3 when I get the chance? As far as, I mean, I've came up here before and I've asked, to do something with this property. It looks like if you weren't here in 2013, you weren't a part of the whole, you can't say no now, basically. We're all stuck with this. And part of me is annoyed because we're going to spend a lot of money right now. I don't understand why this can't be part of the normal process where we put it in the budget next week. For instance, why are we having a special section? Why can't this be done as part of a normal business for next week session? But anyways, moving on. The movement of the road, we've had 4 different designs now from from Lake Superior Watershed Partners. I'm wondering, is this an evolution of those designs, and will we get another one? Could we get another one? Because there's some parts that I'm curious about. A connector path down at the NMU Rock Beach. Are we taking away the parking that's at the NMU Rock Beach? Are we going to add to that part of the beach down at Holly Road? Are we going to include a spot where there's parking midway? Because right now it looks like it's a straight path just like we had before, but that doesn't really allow for people to go out and enjoy. I did notice that there's a couple points where you want to have boardwalks coming out. That to me seems kind of dangerous if we're really trying to build a road back up because of the waves that come in and the power that hits it. Again, I wanted to turn this little corner into a wave generating, or not wave, but electricity from wave generations, and I think we can still do it. At the same time, you're too far ahead. You've already made the decisions about this is the way the road's going to look, and we just have to deal with it. So in that sense, you're going to take money from other projects. I wonder when you're going to replenish those projects. Are those projects, in essence, the money we gave for those projects, are you taking them away from those projects so then you're not allocating the money that you approved on the nights for those projects? That's my problem with College Ave. When is College Ave going to get redone? And I don't mean the part with the hospital. You've already explained it, that you want the developers to pay for that. Last sense, if the developers pay for other roads in our city, why aren't the developers paying for, I guess, phase 2? Or why aren't we putting this on hold? Because there are no potholes on Lakeshore Drive. You can drive that today. There are potholes over by the high school. There are a lot of roads right now that you're going to put on pause that we've been waiting for at least 3 years for College Ave. So 2 and 3, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the commission? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Commissioners, that brings us to consent item number 1. And the clerk, are we okay? Okay, I thought I saw a signal to speak. Consent item number 1, and clerk, if you would please read the background. Let me back off from that. Consent item number 1 is consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the past agenda. Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds.
I move that the consent agenda be approved.
And we have a second from Commissioner Frazier. Any comment, Mayor Pro Tem?
None.
Commissioner Frazier, none?
No
Any other
comment.
commissioner? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as motioned, please signify by saying yes. Yes. Any opposed by no? Hearing none, it is approved 7-0. Now we go to new business. And item number two is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Coastal Resilience Fund Grant. Clerk, if you would please read the background.
Thank you, sir. The Superior Watershed Partnership was awarded a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Coastal Resilience Fund in the amount of $2.5 million for the restoration of Lake Superior shoreline and relocation of Lakeshore Boulevard between East Fair Avenue and Hawley. The grant is contingent upon $3 million in matching funds from the City of Marquette. The primary purpose of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant is to address the effects of destructive wave action and compounding damage to the lakeshore that has proven a persistent issue for the city. Due to rising lake levels, changing weather patterns, and an overall increase in damage to this section of roadway, this area has been flagged as a major problem for the city and has been designated a sleeping dragon due to the size and scope of the proposed project. Currently, the damage has become so severe that the reconstruction plan, approved by the City Commission in 2013 to relocate the road and provide erosion control along the shoreline, needs to be enacted in order to preserve the area. The total estimated cost for the project is $12,259,000 when completed in 2 phases. The City Commission approved the design of these plans through a public process in March 2013. Recently, a commission work session was held on February 28, 2019 to discuss the awarded grant and 2 proposed project phases, and an additional public information session was also held for residents on April 3, 2019. Phase 1 will include the relocation of Lakeshore Boulevard, the installation and upgrade of municipal utilities necessary for the development of the adjoining Cliffsdow property, and temporary erosion and damage control for areas close to the shoreline. The estimated cost for this phase will be $4,370,000 and will be funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant and corresponding match from the city. Phase 1 construction is being recommended for 2020, with Phase 2 to follow in 2021 and 2022. 2 2020 capital improvement plan projects will need to be rescheduled in the capital improvement plan to clear funding for the matching funds from the city for the first phase of construction. Fiscal effect: staff has budgeted $4,370,000 for Phase 1 of this project, of which $2,325,200 will be provided by the $2.5 million National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. $174,800 of that grant will be utilized by the Superior Watershed Partnership for such things as habitat restoration and monitoring, public education, and grant administration. $2,044,800 of the city's required $3 million match will be included in the 2020 capital improvement budget, with the remaining $955,200 of the city's match requirement being fulfilled in a subsequent phase. Recommendation: approve $3 million as matching funds toward the $2.5 million National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant awarded to the Superior Watershed Partnership for the Lakeshore Boulevard reconstruction project. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Commissioners, what is your pleasure? Commissioner Frazier.
I make a motion to approve the $3 million.
Mr. Lutenberger asked to speak.
Did you ask to speak, Ms. Lutenberger?
Yes, he did.
2 and 3. Then
But we'll do that.
forgive my error. Please come up and speak.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Again, I kind of rattled through a bunch of stuff, but let me reiterate. This is not an urgent project. I really don't understand, other than maybe the Watershed Partnership needs to get grant approval for it. It doesn't seem, though, like it's something that requires us to put other roads on hold. And I know I'm, yelling at a hurricane, so it's not going to help. But the idea that we're going to rearrange the road for a project that you just set up a subcommittee of the 3 commissioners to then look at what Cliffdow's improvements could be. So are we building a road, in essence, putting a cart before the horse, where we don't know what kind of services are going to be needed? Isn't that the logic for College Ave? That if they come in there and start destroying this road, are we now then just wasting our money? Or are we going to have to reallocate funds now on an existing lakeshore road to then improve it? These are not questions that get answered in a week. And in fact, they won't get answered tonight. But there is a real sense of what is the construction that we're doing for Lakeshore Drive or Avenue, and what is the construction timeline for something like Cliff Dow? You say that there's already two developers interested. Are we then negating or are we taking their advice? I mean, are they here to say this is the kind of building we want to put there? This is the kind of infrastructure we need from the city, this size pipes, these sides. And which way do they have to go? Because it doesn't have to go towards a lake. We've got houses. We've got a canal behind it. There's a possibility that we can rearrange things to the roads already existing. So I guess the bottom line is, my point is, this seems to be hastily put together and rushed through. Again, why can't this be part of a new business item on a normal night? Why is this then not going to be brought up on the normal night? I mean, is this now pushed under the rug? And for the next 3 years, we've got $12, $13 million put aside that you could be doing in your budget process that comes up in a couple of weeks here? Again, please explain why we need to do this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, your pleasure. Commissioner Frazier, I think you were,
I make a motion to approve $3 million as matching funds toward $2.5 million National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant awarded to Superior Watershed Partnership for the Lakeshore Boulevard Reconstruction Project.
is there a second? Commissioner Schlegel. Second. Commissioner Frazier, any further comments?
We kind of need to get, we've been dealing with this for many years. We kind of have to get it done because the lake's going to continue to going up. It was down like at least 5-6 years ago. It was way down. Now it's way up. And it costs the city, every time a storm hits, it costs the city a lot of money to fix the road as far as clean it up because due to storms. So I think we have to get it done ASAP.
Commissioner Schlegel.
Go along with some of those comments as far as the need to take care of the first phase in order to keep the road from being washed out for the rest of this season and through the next heavy storm season. I'd also like to, well, I'm sure we'll get a chance to answer Mr. Ludenberger's questions as we move along here, but you know, this has been a very well thought out process that I would like to make sure that the Watershed Partnership gets recognition for the hard work that they put into securing these funds for us, and hopefully future funds that could be coming down the pipe with other pertinent grants. Thank you.
Any other commissioners, comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I was gonna make a motion to suspend the rules for discussion, but we're done past that. So I have a couple questions. First, as I'm looking at this list of revised things that are going to be cut off of the budget, when is the intention for these to come back up? Is there a plan for that currently? Is it the next budget cycle? That's question one.
Yes, we generally move them to the next year. And then other projects get moved even further down the line. The whole budget scenario is in large part based on the amount of money that we want to bond every year. And we have set our limit at $5.5 million. So this, essentially by putting this project in from our Sleeping Dragon list, you're moving two others that are about the same equal value down the road. Now, the other ones you see crossed out on this CIP were crossed out because they didn't meet the $5.5 million cap. They were over the cap. So I instruct the staff to bring the bonding dollars down to $5.5 million. So they cut projects anyway. We cut them every year to maintain our budget limit or our bonding limit. So essentially Front Street and Hewitt Street were added along with the others to help us reach that $5.5 million bonding limit.
Okay, follow-up question. As to Mr. Lutenberger's question, I know that we've had this in a work session, but I'm just asking for the public's knowledge. What kind of deadline are we talking with this? Is this the intention? Because what I understood is that we wanted to start this project
Right.
from this spring/summer.
No. There's a couple deadlines. The reason we're having the special meeting is because per the instructions from the mayor, and I agree that we'd like to have these major decisions by all 7 commissioners. Upcoming schedules have made meetings less likely, or there are meetings coming up where we're not going to have all 7 commissioners, so I asked for the special meeting now to fit this in because I knew I could get 7 commissioners here at this time. The 13th wasn't available for all 7 commissioners. The 28th might have been, but I have other issues that I want to bring on the 28th, that being the piling project, and I didn't want to stack that meeting with 2 big decisions, so I kind of wanted to spread it out. That's the basic reason for the special meeting. However, time-wise is that because this is a shoreline project, it requires an extensive amount of permitting. We'd like to have the project ready to go by the spring of 2020. So we have to begin the permitting process now in order to meet that deadline. We have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers, we have to deal with the DNR, the DEQ, and things of that nature. And in order to fit comfortably under that timeline, we need to get going now.
Okay, I have further comments, but I'll let the rest of the commission chat for a minute.
Comments, other commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
So I do plan to vote yes for this project. It's something that's been on our radar for years. The opportunity for a wonderful $2.5 million grant has come along, and funding has always been our issue. So I think the time is now. I did kind of grapple with this a little bit. It's tough. It's a big ask. I did want to say I am voting yes on phase 1, but I do reserve the right to reconsider for phase 2. One of the main things I'm worried about with phase 2 is the beach, which I know is shoreline restoration, but it is $1 million beach. So I just want to make sure that we're being frugal where we can be, not saying that, yes or no on that, but just to reevaluate at that time. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Hill?
All right. We found out which streets would be taken off of this list tonight. And that one of the public mentioned this seemed a little hasty. That seems like we're being given the as the final decision makers. I know the city staff work hard to evaluate what work needs to be done, but no, I don't feel like I've had enough time to understand what is going to be what is being put off in order to work on this project. So that just want to get that out of the way. When I came on board in November, I was handed a piece of paper at my very first meeting and was told that the proposed plan for compensating for the loss of We Energy tax revenue. And one of those items was the sale of the Cliff Dow's property. And that we anticipate hopefully receiving about $1.6 million for the sale of this property. Fundamentally, that's what's driving this project, as I understand it, unless I can be corrected. And yes, we want to be able to preserve an essential road that means a lot to many people in this community, but we are also doing this in order to develop a property that has sat vacant for many, 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 many years, that has been a significant liability to our community and has cost us a lot of money because of the contamination. And the people who actually contaminated the land were able to get away with it and were not actually held accountable for that contamination. And so we are taking on the responsibility of now, in this decade, in this century, things that happened in the previous century. And so I would like to also raise the issue of how much money are we going to receive for this sale of the Cliff Dow's property, which I don't think is fair to separate from the receiving of this grant. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for this contaminated land. And so that's a question that I would like to have answered before I'm able to vote on this. And finally, well, two more things. As we have, found out, the lake is rising and is going to be at levels that we have never seen since the time of European living here anyway. And so we are facing great unknowns. And to invest and to take money away from the rest of the city that people use every day, to invest in a place where we don't know what's going to happen, to me is a very significant risk. And I'm very concerned that we are putting money into this location when we know we have needs in the rest of the city. And yes, we have a partner that has brought in other funds, but the rest of this project is contingent on federal funding that we have never received yet. And so I am very uncomfortable voting to allocate city funds to a location that has not, I don't see how, when other communities, because of climate change, are facing absolute devastation, loss of life, loss of property, loss of economic, the basis of their economy, in terms of farming communities that are being hurt right now by flooding. The Mississippi has been at flood stage for 41 days in parts of Iowa. I don't think we're going to get that FEMA money. And unless someone can tell me that we are, I would be shocked. We're not at risk like other parts of the United States are. And so I hope that I'm wrong, because I'm going to vote no, and we're going to go ahead with this project, and I hope I'm wrong. But I see this as investing in a part of the community and ignoring the parts of the community that we use every day. And in particular, I've had several members of the community come up to me and say, what are we going to do about Lincoln Boulevard? That's where our high school is. We're asking our community to use that road every day. That road's in terrible shape. And people's cars are going to be harmed using that road. So, and then on top of that, at the very end, in this background, it says there's $955,000 in subsequent phase that also hasn't been identified. So again, I'm being asked to vote on projects that I don't know about yet. So yeah, I have a lot of concerns about this, and I've articulated them all. I've brought them up in emails. I've brought them up in work session. We're gonna, and I'm just, this is hopefully something that will work, but I can't in good conscience put our community's money on this when there's so many other needs that we know need to be addressed.
Comments from any other commissioner? Commissioner Campana.
Well, we've been dealing with this Lakeshore Boulevard problem for 6 years or more, so it's, nothing that just popped up. We've been setting it on and off for years, months, so, we've got a good look at it. We should have a good idea what's going on here. I'm not going to say it's an easy decision for me, but in a way it is, because I ask myself, what do the people of Marquette, the people that elected us, what do they want? And I'm under the impression that the majority of people want that road. They do. I really believe the majority of the residents want that road. If we can fund it properly, in a fiscally responsible way, then they want that road, just like they want Presque Isle. They would not want us to close off Presque Isle. It's something that, it says Marquette, and it's what they want. Another thing is we got $2.5 million in a grant. I hate to call it free money, but it's free money. If we say no to this grant, we lose it. If we lose this, if we turn down this grant, we'll never get another grant. And that Lakeshore Boulevard will never be completed. The money to pay for the match, That's going to come in a planned out way. It's not going to come out of the capital improvement plan all at once. It'll be bits and pieces, so it's not a big slam on other developments. Yes, some roads are going to be put off, but that's the game we play. You know, it will. The other roads will get done. It just won't get done this year. I think the most important thing is that we get Lakeshore Boulevard done, because if we don't, it's gone forever. It just is. By developing it, we're going to make that area nicer. Be more attractive to buyers that want to buy Cliffdale property. And it's important that we sell Cliffdale property, because since they left over 20, 25 years ago, nobody wants to buy it. If we get some buyers right now, I think it's very important that we be able to sell it. So the whole project to me just makes sense. Yes, we wish we had more money to do other things, but we don't. But I think this is the best approach. So I'm going to vote yes for it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Reynolds, please.
I have another comment, but I was wondering, Commissioner Hill asked a question, and I was actually looking forward to the answer to that question too you asked earlier. I think particularly as to the property and the amount of money that we would receive for Cliffsdale. So I'm just looking for the answer on that too.
Well, just to clarify, this project, or this road project, is not being driven by that property sale. This came up because for the last 6 years we've been putting this project on our Sleeping Dragon list, and that's a name we've given to projects that we need to do but we just couldn't afford. So during the last 6 years, at least, if not longer, we've been applying for grants on a regular basis to try to get this project done. So we finally got a grant. We finally won a grant, so that's why we're moving this project forward. Now, the development is something we were actually working on before this road movement came up, before we actually were awarded the grant. So by coincidence, they came together at the same time, which I think is a good thing, because if we do sell this property and do create a significant development, a brownfield plan could be placed in place that would then help offset or completely pay for the match. In other words, the taxes from that development will pay for the match. Excuse me. So I had done some estimates through our appraiser as to what the value of that property might be. The number you stated, Commissioner Hill, is a number that I predicted. Of course, the true value of that sale will be dependent on an appraisal. If and when the committee does come together with a selection, we will move ahead with an appraisal of that property as part of that process and determine the value. Which, you know, if you compare it, for example, to Founder's Landing, which is a piece of property about 1/4 the size, we just sold for $1.1 million or $1.2 million. This property is probably worth at least that, if not more. It's a larger piece of property. However, it is significantly more contaminated, which I think will be a factor. And just one other thing, if you don't mind. The question came up early on in the discussion about, would this road be essential to that development? And it is. So that may be where some might be thinking that it's related to the development. However, that question came up as to would the road be essential, not a new road. There was some discussion at one time whether we wanted to have a road at all. And when I proposed that to the potential developers, they said, well, we need a road there of some kind. So whether it be the current road or a new road, it makes sense to have a road there for a development. If you're not going to have a road there, then the property becomes obviously less attractive to developers. Does that answer your question? Kind of.
Yes, I was just looking for the answer to that.
Sorry.
And everybody who's made comments this evening on this issue is completely right. I've been sitting up here for 6 years, and we've been talking about this for 6 years. And the only reason I will be voting how I am this evening is because of this list that I was provided beforehand just now as I walked in at 5 o'clock, and I will be voting no because I don't think that I've had the opportunity to inform residents of what's going on. I realize we've had work sessions, we've been talking about this for 6 years, but I don't feel entirely comfortable going forward at this point. So to that, I'm sure it's going to pass, and I hope that as Commissioner Hill said, that she's wrong about the climate change information. But yeah, that's all I have.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Frazier.
I think it's a road we've been dealing with for a long time. It's been a road that everybody loves. And right now, with the rocks being so high, it's hard to drive. Everybody complains during our regular meetings from the public about too much development along Lake Shore and not be able to see the lake. Therefore, this road will increase the view of the lake by moving it over and moving it, from what I understand, be moving it up a couple feet. So you'll be able to see over. Right now, you can't see over the rocks, but with the new road, you'll be able to see over the rocks and see the lake, which is what people want. And, you know, public, they have to close the road every time there's a big storm. The people drive, and that's because people say doesn't close stuff because they want to. It's to protect people. I mean, I've seen it many times. I've driven by, big storm, waves crash over the rocks, and somebody parks and a wave crashing right over in front of their car. So people just from out of town don't understand, you know, the dangers of the lake. Lake's not going to go down anytime soon. It's gonna, they say record levels by the fall. It'll be record levels. It's going to keep going up. It's going to keep on smashing the road up. And agree to have somebody develop the property. They need access to it. Can't say, well, here's a property for sale, but we have to close the road once in a while so you can't get to it. You know, so that's not fair to the developer. So hopefully this road would get things done.
Commissioner Hill.
So thank you for that clarification on what's driving the project and how these two events have come together. I did also want to say another concern I have, and I've said this in work session, but I'll say it here so it's on the public record in another way, is I'm also, these images focus on the project area, so the area from Pine to Hawley Street. I am very concerned about the area from Pine to Fair, and which we also had to close this winter and continues to be an issue. The ditch behind Lakeview Arena is now filling up because the sand comes in front onto that culvert. I was just down there today, and it's clear we were out there with the excavator again to have to pull the sand out to allow the water to drain. When I came on board again in November, there were, that I know of, at least 5 instances in November and December where we had to go out with an excavator to clear out that culvert in order for the water to drain. Plus the sand is coming over the road, the lake is really high, and that's another place that we're gonna have to deal with. And we're putting, again, all of our money into this one location. And yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful. I really hope that this all works out. But I just want to raise up that area is a potential problem as well, let alone what's happening to Picnic Rocks, and which we don't have a plan or money for. And then up at Hawley Street even, the sand is coming onto the road. And what's going to happen when we have our 7-inch rainstorm that they had in Duluth in 2012 and that they had in Ontonagon and Little Sister Point in 2016 and the horrible flooding that happened in Houghton last year. Let's hope that that doesn't come, but it might, and then we're going to be dealing with a lot of damages there. And so I feel that it would be prudent to be conservative at this time, but I understand that folks have been working on this for a long time, are eager to give it a try.
Other commissioners, Mr. Schlegel.
Thank you. Good conversation. It's always good to hear many different angles. I guess one of the things that surprises me is that some people have a little bit more history than others, but when I first started to get into public service, it was eventually on the Planning Commission, and the first 2 or 3 years we had road our instead of being a $5.6 million budget, we had $1.5 to $2.5 million max for the entire road system, all of that stuff. Okay, so we're sitting here right now with an entire year plus worth of grant money compared to those days when we were so strapped, whether it be from state funding or the decision by then city manager, however it worked out. But I remember sitting there going through this list of names, street names, some of them that are still on this list coming due because we got pushed back year after year after year. Okay, this isn't something new. You're going to deal with it for the next several years as long as you're on the commission. Be prepared because you're going to have hurt feelings every time one of these road construction projects gets bumped out for another year. Believe me, living on one side of town where Altamont was taking its toll on my car for a number of years, it's nice to see it getting done this year, even though I've been gone now for 2. So I'm happy for everybody else over there now that doesn't have to deal with that. So we're looking at, again, a significant amount of money that's being brought to the table to help us with this this road program that, again, it's a perfect storm, all right? We got high water. We're going to have record levels. This is, it's a great time for this project to come up for people like myself who want the road to be rebuilt and built up properly and used engineered stone to do it the right way and to make sure that we're going to have success rates like we're seeing out on Presque Isles, erosion control. This stuff is done by people that are, the studies, the proposed layouts, we're not messing around. This isn't short thought process here by any means. And I guess, you look at how much this road means to access. I don't know how many times, I'd say at least 20 times I've had people come up to me that live on the east side and say, when are we going to open up a road? We couldn't run the road down to Fair, even though we could have plowed it out, because then you'd just be doubling back behind the YMCA and up that way. It was probably, and I'm assuming this, but just out of common sense, you could take it there because your main arterial going up towards the university and then down through Presque Isle and around makes the most sense for the traffic and for the neighborhoods. But a lot of people on that east side were asking me when we're going to open that up, because all of a sudden the traffic in their neighborhood has quadrupled, or if not more, and they're concerned about not only the safety of the neighbors, but they didn't move there because there wasn't, it was a nice quiet neighborhood, not a detour. So, I understand, and I respect your opinions and the reasons for doing this, but these types of last-minute checks are going to come up routinely. You got to expect them because there's always an unknown. As far as our infrastructure goes, I think that we didn't see this destruction that many of the other communities did last year during the heavy storms, because our community, our engineers, and our staff have done a fabulous job of preparing ourselves for better, for dealing with those types of water events. We had minimal amounts of damage in some areas that were flooding, especially in South Marquette, but it's because we've done the work ahead of time, building these roads properly so that if water events like that do happen, that we're able to handle them outside of something catastrophic. So, it's certainly a topic that we could sit and talk about all night, but to me, this is between the community, what it means to the community and what it means to our visitors that come to this community, the access to the island, access, it is an arterial, I would consider, and I don't quote me on it, but if I was going to say it's classification, it's more of an arterial roadway, and it needs to be maintained. We can't let this go any further, otherwise we're going to lose the road and you're not going to be able to get it back. Thank you.
Any other commissioner? Seeing none, let me make some comments. I will vote for the motion. I will do that for a variety of reasons. Number one, it is a critical pathway in the city of Marquette That's how we get to Presque Isle. That's also how we get to see the lake shore and enjoy the lake shore. By moving the road, by doing what we're planning to do with this particular project, we will access more lakeshore property for more of our citizens than we ever have before. Instead of just being able to park alongside of the road, you'll be able to go down, see it, again, experience it, get a much better view of the lake. And we are a maritime community. People come here for the water. We live here because of the water and what the lake means to us. And this is one more aspect of being able to open that up to people. Lakeshore Boulevard is also perhaps the oldest drive in Marquette. Built back in the 1880s when Peter White was able to obtain Presque Isle for the citizens of Marquette, and this was the road that was constructed to get folks to the island. There's a lot of history to it. There's a lot of fine memories by people who grew up in Marquette and people who visited here and moved here. We love that road because that's the approach we have to Presque Isle. Now, that's not a financial statement. That's not an effort to say that because of that we need to spend all this money, but rather what it really does is put into our minds the importance of that particular stretch of highway, of road, of boulevard in the city. I would point out a couple of things that have been said and put some spin to them a little bit, or a little different angle of looking at it. We are going to hit, in all likelihood, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, a high water level on Lake Superior that will exceed anything we've had before. That sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? That sounds like you ought to go in your backyard, buy some lumber, and start to build an ark. The reality is sometime around next month, early part of the month, according to the Corps of Engineers, we may be 2 or 3 or 4 inches above where we previously had been in 1986. And then if you look at the Corps projections, and they have been measuring the lake water levels in all of the 5 Great Lakes since 1860, at that point the lake levels begin to decline, which is typical. The lake levels run in cycles. So all this information publicly available, go online, download it, look at it, analyze it yourself, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about and what the prognostications are by the experts. And that would also include our good friends in FEMA. Was recently at a meeting with them just last week. So that's the way they're seeing the world. We're not going to flood out up here. Isn't going to happen. Now, the folks that are downstream, they might have a different story, but where we are in Lake Superior, we certainly are extremely fortunate in that regard. It is my belief, it is my conclusion that we will never have enough resources. We will never have enough money. We will never have enough time. We will never have enough manpower to do what all of us would believe to be would be adequate planning or execution. It doesn't happen. What does happen is being able to make the best you can with what you have and get the job done. And that's, I think, what we're looking at here. Yes, I like more time to study. Yes, I like more time to look at this sheet or that sheet or consider this or ask this question. But the end game is we have a window of opportunity to get this work done. And getting it done, I consider to be critical for the public interest in the city of Marquette and for the future of this city. And that's why I will be voting yes. Commissioners, are there any further comments? Hearing none, I will at that point or now call the vote. All those commissioners voting in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
All those commissioners voting against, signify please by saying no.
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 I believe the vote is 5-2. Any disagreement? Then the vote is 5-2. Commissioners, that brings us down to our final new business item of the evening, grant assistance, Lakeshore Boulevard relocation project. This is a continuation of the previous discussion, really. Mr. Clerk, if you could please read the document.
Thank you, sir. The City of Marquette has been working with the Superior Watershed Partnership to secure grant funding for the relocation of Lakeshore Boulevard. As part of the grant process, the Superior Watershed Partnership retained OHM advisors to provide technical assistance in preparing an application for a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant opportunity. In January of 2019, it was announced that the Superior Watershed Partnership was awarded a $2.5 million grant to cover a portion of the cost of the Lakeshore Boulevard relocation project. However, any cost incurred prior to November 1, 2018 is not grant eligible. OHM advisors were instrumental in providing technical assistance resulting in the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant award. Fiscal effect: sufficient funds are available in the fiscal year 2019 capital outlay budget, Recommendation, approve invoice number 3850 in the amount of $5,000 to Superior Watershed Partnership for grant assistance as part of the Lakeshore Boulevard relocation project. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Ms. Lutenberger, I believe you had comments to make?
Again, thank you. Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in the city of Marquette. So this is about the grant assistance program, and I get this, and we're compensating them for putting in the time and effort, and we're paying a external group who came in and tried to decide what's best. So my question becomes on this: what did the criteria that we gave them, OHM, and that we're now using as a basis for the actual number two? I kind of wish these two were flip-flopped personally, but is the restrictions we gave them on what we expected, was it just beach restoration at that point? Was it a beach restoration with a two-lane road? Was it a beach restoration with two-lane road and parking spaces? The fact that we're looking at such a large location and we're comparing it to Founder's Landing size, are we going to stick with a two-lane road? Was this OHM included in expanding our road? Are we going to do anything more than, my question is basically, what were the criteria that we gave OHM associates to actually follow? And I'm not saying this money isn't well spent. I'm actually trying to ask, can we call them up again and get more of this now that it's after November 2018? Because I do think you've all agreed that we need more work done on this location. We need more information. Can we call them up and say, how contaminated is this land? Because the stories I've heard is 20 feet is nowhere near deep enough to see how far Cliff Dow pumped their stuff in. They had pipes that just went straight into the ground, and they expected the watershed to take it out. These are, I'm not saying things that aren't addressed, because they might be addressed in the second phase or further along, but it's something that I had concerns about, is if we're paying for their expertise, what criteria did we ask them for to stay within the bounds of? Because if they came back and said, oh, wow, you're going to have a two-lane or a four-lane road, that's a whole different story for how strong the road has to be, how close it has to be to the highway or to the lakeshore, how much other aggregate we're going to have to throw down. Are we running trucks down this road? These are all things that I would like to see brought out into the public. And granted, this is just paying off services already rendered. So please do, but also give them a note saying we need your help again.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the commission?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, forget about that. Yeah, I'm having a tough night here. That brings us down then, commissioners, if I may have your pleasure on this motion or on this item. Commissioner Campana.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the invoice number 3850 in the amount of $5,000 to Superior Watershed Partnership for grant assistance as part of the Lakeshore Boulevard relocation project.
Is there a second? Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Commissioner Campana, further comments?
The least we can do is pay them for all the assistance they have given us. We're very fortunate to have them in our city. They've done many services that have proven to be very beneficial for many improvements within our city. So I'm all for this.
Commissioner Frazier.
I agree with Commissioner Campana. We're all for this because they did a lot of work. Grant writing is a science. It's not easy for understand. So I congratulate them for doing so much work.
Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, all those commissioners in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes. Yes. Any commissioner opposed by no? Hearing none, motion passes 7-0. Now I'm ahead of myself and we're into public comments. Any members of the public desiring to make a public comment to the commission, remember please not to exceed 3 minutes. Please state your name and physical address when making public comments.
I guess I'll start it off again. Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in the city of Marquette. I'm curious now how this moves forward in the committee and the subcommittees that you're going to be talking about with the Cliff Dow sales and the improvements you're going to be making. I'm curious if the 3-member group is a way to make an absolute motion, just like tonight happened, where Ms. Reynolds wanted to suspend and have a conversation first, but immediately went into a motion. That seems more likely when we move forward on this next $12 million project, and whatever deals you might be making with the developers. So that's the other thought is we have land for sale. We don't know how much it's worth, and you're about to move into another phase where you're talking development with developers. I'd like to see their plans. Because if we're putting in a road, like I said, for the grant thing, if we're putting in a road and they come up and say, well, we're going to have a 400-person condo set or whatever they want to do down there, will we need to redesign that road again? Are we moving so fast that we need to work with developers? I mean, that's the logic you guys had on College Ave. And Mr. Frazier, you bring that up a lot in the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to tear down the property or are they going to leave it standing? But yet we won't fix the roads. We won't even fill the potholes. So when we're talking about roads that need work, yes, Lakeshore Drive needs work. Yes, it can be worked on. Yes, you're going to get a $2.5 million grant. Who's to say you're not going to get it next year? Yeah, it took us 6 years. But if we tell them, hey, we're just not ready for this because it came up too quickly, will the purchasing of sand, will the purchasing of the plant growth that we're going to put into this development be affected if we don't design or if we don't build on the road next year? Could we put all of that sand and all of that plant growth in the actual Cliff Dow storage area and hold off until next year when this budget goes through, or hold off 2 years from now when the budget goes through? But I'm looking for you to put this into a normal budget if we've been waiting for 6 years, because it's not in the master plan. It's not part of what your budgetary has talked about in the last couple of years. This reconstruction is in the master plan, but it wasn't set to be done by 2020. It wasn't set to be done by 2025. These are things that if we take the time and dedicated effort to then say this is the way we should do it, because isn't that the logic you guys use for the marijuana thing? We could have had legal marijuana already this week or this year, and yet you say we should wait our delay. We should make sure it's right. Why aren't you doing that with the road?
Anyone else to address?
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic. Just some random thoughts. First of all, my friend Colleen Roberts will be thrilled to hear that the vote tonight was 5-2 and not 7-0. It indicates that there is independent thought on this commission and that different voices are being heard, which is a good sign going forward. The issue of Lakeshore Boulevard, and I'm using my corporate experience here. You've had about 10 years of asking people for money to fix that road. And this past year, through a combination of luck, good fortune, and all of the sevens on the board lining up, you managed to get more money than anybody hitherto has gotten for the city of Marquette. I don't think there's been ever a grant this big. And I've been in corporate realities all my life, and if you ask for something and ask for something and ask for something, and by the grace of God you get it, and then you turn around and say to people, oh, geez, now's not a good time for it, even though we've been asking it for 8 years, that puts you so far down on the list, you're not going to get another grant. So for that reason, I probably should have brought that up to begin with, but just the common sense of it is, when somebody hands you $2.4 million, run for it legally. And then a third thing, my apologies to everybody in the room. I was traveling yesterday and I did not get here in time for the marijuana discussion, but I did encounter an interesting situation checking into a hotel in the downstate area. It happened to be on an Indian reservation, and yes, for the record, it happened to be a casino hotel. But when I checked into the hotel for the first time in my life, I had to sign a piece of paper that said I agreed I would not bring or use any cannabis product on the premises. And that was a contingency, that I would not be allowed to stay at that hotel unless I signed that form. Now, this is something I don't think we've had any discussion about, because we have a Native American reservation, but I don't believe it's in the city limits of Marquette. But one of the options, I just happened to want to stay at that hotel, so I signed the paper. But I mean, they excluded medical marijuana as well. So one of the things as you move forward for the state laws is to check out the opt-out provisions, whether an institution or an organization can basically say, as a condition of admittance to this building, you can't have marijuana on you. Because I found it fascinating. It was the first time, and I actually made a copy of the paper because I said, may I show this to people? I was going to send it to you. Again, I didn't get in last night till very late. But that's my thought. I think this was the right decision. There's never a perfect time, but now is the time to save Lakeshore Boulevard for all of us. And I thank you for your attention to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, public comment is closed. That brings us to comments by the commission, from the commission. Commissioner Campana, would you begin?
You always make me go first.
We were at the forest end.
Okay. Short meeting, I don't have much to say. There will be no condos built on this stretch, so, you know, in case anybody's wondering about that, we get those questions. No condos. The other thing that wasn't brought up was, where do we get this future money to finish the project, the Lakeshore Boulevard project? It wasn't mentioned that the Corps of Engineers who extended the break wall, has been blamed for the reason that we're having these problems. And the city is petitioning them, looking for a grant from them to correct that. And it would be a big grant. We're talking like maybe 10 million. So there are, the Great White Hope is the Corps of Engineers. They admitted responsibility. Now we'd like them to come up with the money. But, you know, you're dealing with the government. Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Frazier?
Glad we're moving forward on Lakeshore. It'd be a bigger improvement than what we have now. So Mike doesn't have to close the road anymore. I think Mike was patrolling that road when he was in high school, wasn't it, Mike? But anyway, I'm glad we're finally moving forward on it. As far as the hospital road, College Avenue, you want to talk about development, you can ask Ryder purchase the property, and they have plans for development. They talk about tearing down half the building, possibly redoing other areas. The Marquette General owns a bunch of houses, redo those houses, build some more townhouses, maybe a hotel where the helicopter pad is. There's all kinds of ideas they have. They're going to leave the ER as it is right now, as, you know, develop on that because that's a big property. But as far as the rest of it, they're talking about tearing down a lot of it, so that's going to damage a lot of the road. And they might need to rip up curbs and put new hitches in. Who knows what they're going to do? But they have a lot of plans. You're welcome to ask them. They'll give you their ideas, what they have planned. They'll do a good job on that. Let's look forward. We're moving forward on things. And as far as behind Lakeview, that's another part of the lake. You know, that's going to have to be done too, but this will be all included in the Lakeshore Boulevard. We've been working on this for a long time, like everybody said, and just got to do it where we get money to do it. Like I said, you can't walk away from $2.5 million grant. Just help us get it done, and other projects will get done eventually, just not right now. They'll get done eventually.
Mr. Hill?
We never answered the question about what OHM offered, so I think that maybe the city manager or someone could answer that question at some point, because I don't know. And I certainly think that I know the city has received grants of over $1 million or more from the state at different times. This may be the biggest private grant we've received. I also don't know that, but I do know the water department in particular has done a good job of getting us funds in order to have the quality wastewater plant and drinking water plant that we have. Like I said, I do hope that we can avoid any spectacular unknowns that mean that this project can all go forward. Just bear in mind that we're going to have the left and not the right image for the foreseeable future. We do not have an understanding of how we're going to achieve the right, just the left. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
My only comment is to Commissioner Campana's comment. There will not be condos on the lakeside, but we are looking at development options across the road. So I just want to be careful there that the public is aware we may actually be looking at condos across the street.
Right.
That's all. I don't really have any other comments. I think we've hashed everything out. I just want to make sure so that we're not backtracking later is all.
Commissioner Schlegel.
Good catch. And it, I guess one of the things that I look forward to is I look at the future development there and having as much room between the road and the lake as there will be in at the widest point up to 100 yards, if I'm not mistaken. You know, take a ride around Lower Harbor. You know, you sit there and you drive next to the birdhouses, but you look out at the lake and you've got all those all that space between you and the lake and the park and how it's utilized and what it means to the community. Man, I think that this is going to be a great project for Marquette's future. I really do, and I think that it's going to be sensitive to so many different emotions that we may have heard tonight, and others that we haven't, especially with the dunes and the swales and the proper usage of water capturing and things along those lines. This is just a very exciting opportunity, and very many, there were so many different aspects of the process that we're going to see put into this were done specifically to achieve those areas of the grants that could be accumulated. And I just think that it's been done well, and that we'll look back at this in the future and be very, very happy with our decision. Thank you.
I don't have any more comments this evening.
Just a couple of random thoughts, I think, to finish off with. A comment was made about suspending the rules before discussion and doing that as after motion, both of which are allowed certainly under Robert's rules. We tend to follow Robert's rules, though not slavishly so. If you suspend the rules prior to discussion, it gives you a little more opportunity without having had a motion made, and that's a perfectly acceptable way to go if a commissioner desires to do so. The other methodology is simply the way we usually do it. Whereas a motion is made, a motion is seconded, and then discussion engenders from there. And as you see, we don't limit it following that process either. So there's certainly full value for commissioners to make a full explanation of what they particularly believe or think. So it's more of a process than it is, I think, particularly weighted one way or another. Big thanks to the Watershed Foundation folks for what they did, for being able to garner that money and being partnered with the city, not only there, but in so many ways. It's almost like having an environmental department as an arm of city government. And I can only say that in a very, very positive method, because these guys just do terrific work, not only for us, but for many other communities throughout the Upper Peninsula, and really the state too. Just a fantastic group of people. Comment was made about the three-member committee to look at the potential developers of the Cliffsdale property. They don't decide anything. They come back with recommendations. The full commission examines everything, goes back through it, and makes a decision. So really it's an effort, I think, to kind of narrow down some of the process a little bit to still allow and encourage and must have the fullest participation by every city commissioner. It comes down to a problem of the not Freedom of Information Act, of the Open Meetings Act, whereas if you have four commissioners discussing a topic or a project that can be seen to be, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is decision-making, I guess, then that is certainly against state law. However, if we have three doing it, then it's quite legal. They can in turn bring that project back. That is the same methodology as the city employed for the hospital project when the initial negotiations for keeping that in town took place, as well as with Eagle Mind for managing to secure $850,000 plus or minus annually for the use of Wright Street. That's the first time a mining company in the history of the known world ever actually paid a city for rumbling its trucks through the city streets. And we were able to get that done in Marquette, and that negotiation was done by a three-member committee that in turn brought the recommendation back to the full commission that accepted it. So just a different way of doing business. Lastly, good meeting. good discussion, good points of view, good ways of looking at the same information and evaluating it. And that's what we're here to do. I would hesitate to have tried to have done this during a full commission meeting, because look, we've been here an hour and 15 minutes, and that's on one topic. But there's been no effort made, I believe, to stifle any discussion. There's been no effort made to limit it. It's to put the full discussion out in front of the public, and certainly we have done that. City Manager, any comments?
Thank you, and thank you for your continued support. Just to answer the previous question regarding OHM, and it's my understanding that OHM is a coastal engineering firm, something that we need for this project we don't have on in-house. So when we put this project together, city staff engineered the road movement. OHM was our counterpart to help us engineer the shoreline, the wave armor, or the shoreline armoring and things of that nature. They are linked to the Army Corps of Engineer, which is another grant that we've applied for, as well as a FEMA grant. So it isn't just this one grant. There's 3 grants out there that we've had their use from. So we didn't lay any claim to knowing how to fix the shoreline, so we went through the Superior Watershed Partnership and trusted them with OHM as a competent coastal engineering firm.
A great example too of something that was brought to our committee by a citizen that was concerned. There's a lot of foot traffic that walks up into Econo, and as you can see, there's no sidewalk here, and in the winter it's much worse. And so, you know, Mike reviewed with us that, you know, is that owned by Econo or is that owned by the city? So that was an example, and that is a city road, and so we're looking into making it better there for pedestrians. So, so we do listen to people. Another big thing for us is